أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم عما جاءك من الحق لكل جعلنا منكم شرعة ومنهاجا ولو شاء الله لجعلكم أمة واحدة ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم فاستبقوا الخيرات إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون وأن احكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم واحذرهم أن يفتنوك عن بعض ما أنزل الله إليك فإن تولوا فاعلم أنما يريد الله أن يصيبهم ببعض ذنوبهم وإن كثيرا من الناس لفاسقون أفحكم الجاهلية يبغون ومن أحسن من الله حكما لقوم يوقنون صدق الله العظيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Distinguished lecturer of the 12th edition of the message, Professor Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Puang. Minister of Islamic Affairs, Dr. Ahmad Ziad, officials from the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, and all our beloved guests for tonight. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to you all. It is my duty and pleasure to welcome you all once again to the lecture series, The Message. Tonight's lecture is the 12th edition of the series, which is organized by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in the bid to promote religious awareness among the Maldivian population. The ceremony was commenced with the recitation of Holy Quran by Al-Qari Abdul Jalil Ismail, followed by my welcome note. Next on the agenda is the speech by our special lecturer for tonight, Professor Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Puang. Before calling Professor Hidayat on stage, I'd like to give our audience a brief introduction about our lecturer. He is currently a professor at Sharia and Law Department in the Academy of Islamic Studies at University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. His area of specialization is Islamic law of transactions and property, contemporary issues of fatwa and Sharia courts in Malaysia. He has been teaching at the University of Malaya since 1987, both at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. He has successfully supervised more than 30 postgraduate theses and dissertations, and written and presented more than 50 articles and papers in journals and conferences. He is also currently serving as chairman of the Sharia Supervisory Council for Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, BIMB, and chairman of Sharia Committee for Takaful Ikhlas Berhad, TIB. May I call upon Professor Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Boang to deliver his speech. Professor Dr. Ahmad Hidayat Boang.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Mr. Dr. Ahmad Ziyad, official from the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. First of all, I'd like to thank the Ministry for the kind invitation to me and also to my wife attending this very important and probably prestigious lecture series, The Message in this beautiful country, Maldives. The lecture that I will be speaking with you tonight is the importance of Islamic Sharia for the contemporary issues. When we talk about Sharia, we would imagine that the Sharia is about legal implementation of the law. What happened in the Sharia courts, what happened in the fiqh book, that's Sharia. Actually, the meaning and the understanding of Sharia is much larger than that. Because if we refer to the hadith of Omar, reported by Omar, I think most of us know this hadith. Hadith went by in a day where there is a man came to see the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and this man is very clean. His clothes is very clean. We know that in Arabia there is a desert and there are storm, there are many sand around, and whoever walks in the desert will have his clothes dirty. But this man is very clean. His clothes are very clean, and is no evidence of his traveling from far away. But yet nobody in Madinah know this man, and he came straight away to the Prophet mosque and approaching the Prophet closely until he said that his knee touching the Prophet's knee, and then he asked question to the Prophet, 3 questions. What is Iman? And the Prophet answered, what is Iman? I think I don't need to explain what is Iman to you. The Arkanul Iman, there are about 6 Arkanul Iman. And the Prophet explained to him. And then, after the Prophet explaining to him the Arkanul Iman, the Prophet said to him, the man said to him, yes, that's true, Sadaqta. And then he started to ask another question, the second question, what is Islam? And the Prophet answered the meaning of Islam and what are the constituents of Islam that we know as Rukun or Arkanul Islam, the 5 Arkanul Islam. I don't think I do need to explain what is Arkanul Islam. Probably you all already know what is Arkanul Islam. If somebody here do not know Arkanul Islam, probably they have some problem. And then after the Prophet replied the meaning of Arkanul Islam, he said, that's true, Sadaqta. And then he started to ask the last question, what is Ihsan? And Prophet replied back or answered back, what is Ihsan? So, Islam, Iman, Islam, and Ihsan for me, and my understanding is Sharia. Because if we open the book, the academic book, or book on faith that be written by many scholars today, to the meaning of Sharia, this scholar will say or will tell us is the will of God, Kitabullah ala mukallaf, will of God upon the individual that has the ability to perform the obligation, al-mukallaf. So will of God comprise of what? Of al-iman, what the Muslim should believe in faith, in matter of faith. And number two, what Muslim should do in terms of obligation, and what Muslim must not do in terms of prohibitions. And number three is the heart. Muslim must be sincere in doing his obligations, and Muslim must be compassionate to others. So these three things, according to the psychological study today, we know the mind, the connective is iman. The action, the psychomotor, is the faith. And the heart, affection, our compassion, our sincerity. So these three elements comprise what we know as the Sharia. Meaning that the Sharia is much larger than what we understand as just merely to the legal aspect that we understand today. And most of the Muslim understand Sharia only limited to the legal aspect. And this is a mistake in my understanding, because certain Muslims tend to forget these three elements. They just concentrate on one element, the faith, not the ibadah, the salah, the prayers, the zakah. That's Sharia. Other things, probably they have less concern about it as Sharia. So if we pray without our iman, if somebody pray without iman, his prayer not be accepted at all. Similarly, if somebody prays, if somebody have faith, have the conviction, have the iman, believe in God, but does not pray, it's not considered as somebody that practicing Sharia. And similarly, a person that have the iman and performing the obligation, but without sincerity, ikhlas. He's praying because of other things, because to get the job, because to show to the people, something like that. And according to certain Sufi master, is not acceptable as his prayer or her prayer is not acceptable at all, because the most important aspect of prayers, you must be sincere. So these three aspects, if we try to, if we forget to implement or to do in our action today, so not considered as Sharia in my opinion. So Sharia is larger than legal aspect, but also consisted in these three aspects: the akidah, the action, and the ihsan or akhlaq. And in our study today, the akidah or iman to our in academic world or academic study is known as ilmu akidah or ilmu tauhid or ilmu kalam, whereas the action part is known as ilmu fiqh, and the akhlaq is known as ilmu tasawuf or ilmu akhlaq. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we mean by Sharia. Let's go to another point. Is that is it enough for us to declare ash-shahada or to say the kalimah? Certain people say ash-shahada, certain people call al-kalimah. Okay, asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Is it enough to say that without any then forget about it and then just keep quiet, do nothing, of course it's not enough, because this kalimah ash-shahadah or this shahadah must have a proof that to be truly a Muslim, that practicing the Sharia. So if you declare yourself as a Muslim through the Shahada, you must prove it. And you must not only just believe in your mind that you believe in God, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not enough. You have to utter it. You have to say it. That's why we uttering the Shahada 9 times a day. During the Fajr prayers, 1 time. During the Zuhur prayers, 2 times. Asar 2, Maghrib 2, and Isya 2. Okay, 9 times a day. We repeating this Shahada. That's why a Shahada in Rukun Islam. In Arkanul Islam, because we utter it, we say it. Because it's not enough for us to just keep in our mind our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We must utter it. And then, this, because in Quran say what? Quran say, Alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat. You must have the belief, the faith, and number 2, you must doing the good deeds. You must perform the good deeds. And what is the good deeds? In my understanding, the good deeds is the fundamental of Islam. The rest 4 in Rukun Islam, the salah, the fasting, the paying of zakah, and if you have the opportunity or ability to perform the Hajj. So this fundamental of Islam, something that the Muslim must always observe without any excuse. For women, probably there's some excuse, but for the man, you must perform it without any excuse, especially the salah. And when a person performing these fundamentals, he actually implementing Sharia through his action as an individual. And then, in addition to that, we have a society. And Muslims live in the society. We cannot live alone in a jungle alone, like Robinson Crusoe. Okay, in Arabic, Ibn Khaldun say, Al-insan madaniyatun bitabai, meaning that people or human must live in a society. Okay, when we live in a society, so there are certain things that we must observe as a society. So in Islam, there is what we call as the principle of Sharia. Principle of Sharia, especially so when the society is governed by a government. Okay, because many obligations and many responsibility and many direction and many of the Quranic injunction can only be carried out by the government. For example, criminal punishment can only be carried out by the government. Okay? So, the principle of Sharia concerning society is based on what we call as maslahah, maqasid. And to ensure the maqasid and to ensure the maslahah, there are certain principles that the government or the society must observe. There are 2 main principles that the society or the government must observe in dealing with Sharia. First, darul mafasid, to avoid hardship or difficulty. And number 2, jadul masalih, to obtain the benefit. So whatever we do as a society or as a government, is to obtain the benefit to the people and to avoid hardship. Tasarruful imam ala ra'iyah manutun bil maslahah. And this maslahah that the government try to do, sometimes it could be something that is against the Quran. Sometimes, one example, during the Caliph Omar period, or during the Caliph Omar, governmentship or caliphship, certain rules that the Caliph Omar has ruled sometimes can be considered by many as against the Quranic teaching. For example, payment of zakah to non-Muslim. During the Prophet time, during Abu Bakar time, zakat was given to the non-Muslim who are sympathizers to the Muslim, who have a lenient heart to the Muslim, mu'allaf, ta'lif al-khulub. That during the Prophet and during the Abu Bakar. But when it come to Umar, he stopped paying this zakah to the non-Muslim that sympathize to the Muslim, that have soft heart to the Muslim. For the reason why he said that during Prophet time, during Khalifah Abu Bakar time, Muslim was weak. We need support from the non-Muslim. But during my time, Islam is strong. I no longer need their support. If they want to become Muslim, they convert to Islam. They want to remain in kafir, in non-Muslim, let it be so. Man sya'a falyu'min, man sya'a falyakfur. So Omar understand the maslahah. And then in implementing Sharia, apart from the maqasid or maslahah, there are also some prohibitions that Muslim must avoid. What I mean by prohibition is that the prohibition that clearly stated in the Quran and the Hadith. Because nowadays there are too many prohibitions made by the scholar. Sometimes the prohibition is only because of their personal inclination. Okay? If you want to prohibit something, must be clearly something that is mentioned in the Quran. I give one example. Killing. Killing is clearly prohibited in the Quran. We cannot kill another person without any reason or without any cause. Meaning legitimate cause. Only the court can order the killing of another person after having found that person probably guilty of committing a crime. But killing is prohibited totally in Islam, because killing is something that is a grave sin. But we can see now today, Muslim killing each other. What happened in the Middle East, we can see very clearly. Muslim has been killed by Muslim. In the old days, Muslim are being killed by the enemy, by a non-Muslim. But today, Muslim are being killed by Muslim. What we seen in the Middle East. I didn't want to go to the politics, but what important here is that the prohibition in Quran says that killing is a crime. Killing is a sin. So we must not commit this kind of crime. So that example of the prohibition that we must avoid. So of course there are many other prohibitions like adultery, theft, wrong acquisition, and other crime that mentioned in Quran and Hadith. And the last part of my lecture is that how we identified four main issues, four main contemporary themes or issues when we're talking about contemporary issues of Islamic Sharia. Number one is prioritization. Number two is personal piety or piousness versus social justice. Number three, fight against Western perceptions. And number four, self-reflection or self-reflection of our weakness. So why I choose these four themes as to mention about the contemporary Sharia, because in implementing Sharia in our current situation, we must prioritize our agenda as according to the Quran and Sunnah. If we see the plight, the condition of Muslim today, we will see two conditions that Muslims face today. First, most of the Muslims are poor. Of course, there are some rich Muslims. I don't deny that. But majority of them are poor. Most of the rich countries in this world are in the West. And number two, security. There is no security in Muslim lands. There are a few Muslim lands are secure. Like Maldives, very peace, no harm, and people can walk about. Nobody can disturb you or can harm you. But if you go to other Muslim country, you are afraid to walk alone at night. Nobody dare to walk at night in some Muslim country. There's no peace. There's no order. I'm saying this because not my own understanding from Quran. Surah Al-Quraish. At'amahum min ju' wa amanahum min khawf. So that's our priority, to give our people, the Muslim, to ensure their social being in the economic situation, and also to ensure peace for them. This we must prioritize in our society, to ensure that the Muslim youth especially got jobs, have jobs, has stable life. And number two, that our country must be secure from any threat from outside or inside. That is also part of the Sharia. Because certain people say that it's not Sharia. It's a Sharia. To give people work and to protect people from danger is Sharia. Because why? Because Quran says so. Because looking back to the what I said just now, Sharia is al-Iman, al-Islam, wal-Ihsan. And then number two, the theme number two, Mr. Chairman, could you give me some time to finish my lecture? I know this 9:30 already. And number two is that personal piety and social justice. Some people, if we go to the mosque, if an imam say Maghrib or say Isha prayers, it's good to have a long prayers. It's good to have to recite the whole Surah Baqarah. Is it good or not? Good. But if you pray in the mosque and the imam, you recite the whole Surah Baqarah in Isha, it's not good. Although individually, personally, it's good for you to read Surah Baqarah, the whole Surah Baqarah. But you cannot do that when you become an imam in the mosque. Because why? Because you have to consider your makmum, the followers, because not all followers are strong as you. There are some poor, there are some sick people behind there. There are some old people behind there. And there are some people that have some business to attend. Okay, probably he has a shop or have a restaurant to attend. So you as an imam must understand this. So that's personal piety. Yes, that's good to perform, to read the whole Surah Al-Baqarah. But when you become an imam,
or when you become, or when you mingle with the society, you must to consider other people as well. You cannot, in other words, you cannot force people to accept your ways, your opinion. Yeah, yes, I suggest now, yes, although that kind of, understanding or that kind of action, something that's good, but when you interact with the society, you must consider it. For example, in Malaysia, certain mosques during the Maghrib or during the Fajr prayers, they put this, sound. They put the Quran, they recite Quran using this microphone sound, very loud. Before Maghrib, very loud. People cannot study, people cannot talk, people cannot, even the children cannot sleep because of the sound. Yes, it's good to put on the mic the Quranic recitation. It's good, but how about other people? So that one of the example that we must, when we personal piety, personal piousness versus the society, we must consider it. But this is lacking in our community. We do not consider the feeling of others. We only consider ourselves. And number 3 is that fighting against Western perception. We know that this one probably, I don't know about the Maldives, but in Malaysia, there are certain Muslim people that being influenced by the Westerner. They say that Islamic religion has no freedom of choice. Okay, Islamic religion discriminate against women. Islamic law, Islamic Sharia have very inhuman criminal punishment like hudud. And then they say that there is no democratic process in Islam. Everything is already been decided in the Quran. We cannot decide otherwise. And then they say that what happened in the world today, this terrorism, okay, is a result of jihad. So the concept of jihad is the reason why this terrorism happened in the Muslim society. Okay, and these are misperception that we must fight. But we must fight back this perception, this bad perception, not through fighting back, but through knowledge, through dialogue, and through explanation. Wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. We must mujadalah. We must have dialogue with them. We must explain to them. But we cannot explain to them unless we have knowledge. Okay? We cannot explain to them until we understand their language or their knowledge. Qatabun nas ala qadri uqulihim. We must speak to other people according to their understanding. That's why the importance of knowledge in our society. And I very happy that Maldivian society are very knowledgeable because the minister, deputy minister, all from Malaysian graduates. Okay, and we are proud that we be able to train Maldivian people in knowledge. Knowledge is the way that we must move forward. Knowledge is nur, is light. So, in order to fight Western perception, because we don't have the military, we don't have the all this weaponry, this bomb. We don't have all the money. Probably some Arabs have the money, but not we. What we have is our ability to study and to be knowledgeable in order to fight this misconception. And the last one is, ladies and gentlemen, is we must also try to reflect ourselves what happened to us today as a Muslim, because we say that we can resolve and solve our problem to the implementation of Sharia. Some people understand and believe that once we implement Sharia, all the issues and problem will go away. Al-Islam huwa hal That's a slogan. In the 70s, I don't know what today, but in the 70s and 80s, we have a slogan, Al-Islam huwal hil. Islam is the solution for the problems. But according to which way that we want to solve our issues? Because if we see Muslim today, we see that Muslims are divided, disunited. Politically, we are divided and disunited. I don't know about Maldives, but in many places in the world, Muslims are divided politically. And also because of and also dangerously, Muslims are divided because of religion, of sectarian. Different mazhab, we are fighting each other. And even worse, because it's different understanding or different interpretation of our religion, of Quran, we fighting. But yet, we know that difference of opinion is a blessing. Ikhtilafu ummati rahmah. Or some say ikhtilafu ashabi or ikhtilafu a'immati rahmah. We should the actual reason for diversity is for blessing, because we can choose whatever opinion that suit our needs. That is the blessing of opinions. But today, the diversity of opinions is the cause for disunity among the Muslims. Very sad. And even sad up to the level of spilling the blood in certain places in the Muslim land and the Muslim. We can see in the newspaper every day Muslim fighting because of different understanding. And then number two, if we investigate and analyze the position of Muslim, we can see that Muslims are poor and economically unstable and dependent on others. Not all states, but some of Muslim states are very poor and dependent on others. If there is no support from outside, they cannot stand, they cannot live. And number three is that of this extremism and terrorism that now befalling some of the Muslim states. And the next is that we have no technology. We have no scientific knowledge. We are dependent on the West or on the East, Japan and Korea, for technology and for scientific, discovery. All our medicine come from the West. We cannot even produce our own medicine. What happens if the America or Europe blocking the medicine come to our country? Okay, there are some herbal, no problem. Okay. Okay. So this one, all this, yet the Quran say, kuntum khairu ummah, you are the best nation. But we are the facts that this is our position. So we must reflect, we must correct ourselves. What is wrong about ourselves that we are in this position, disunited, poor, no technology, no security, and many other disadvantages. So there must something wrong with our method of understanding Islamic Sharia. And in the conclusion, Minister and also other dignitaries and guests, I have three conclusions that I would like to share with you tonight. Sharia is a comprehensive system constituting the mind, the belief, the action, and the affection, the action. So if we want to implement Sharia in our current situation, we must have these three elements. We believe in God, Iman, we do it, we prove it by doing all the fundamentals, and more importantly, the principle of Sharia, the maslahah, the maqasid, And number 2 is that, and the last one, that must be supported by ihsan, sincerity, affection, love toward others, and more importantly, passion. What I can say to you is that Muslims now, they have no passion. They want to implement Sharia. They want to topple the government because the government say does not implement Sharia. But in their desire to topple the government, 200,000 Muslims killed in Syria, 1 million injured, 2 million refugees because the desire of certain people want to topple the government. So dar'ul mafasid awla min jalbi al-masalih. Tab'an, of course, to establish an Islamic state is masalih. But in order to doing that, you must sacrifice 200,000 innocent people, Muslim, being killed, 1 million injured, 2 million refugees. It's something that worthwhile to do that. Of course, the Muslim, the truly Islamic Sharia, according to my understanding, Darul Mafasid is better than Dalbi al-Masalih. And number 3 is that, number 2, my second conclusion is that we must have a new methodology to understand. Not we creating a new one, no. We must choose the right one. Because in our religion, the method and the way of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah is the middle way. If we study the method of Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we will find that the method that being not selected, the method that being the method that being chosen by our ulama of Sunnah Jama'ah is a part in middle way. Wasatiyah we call. Okay. So yes, we always refer to the text, to the literal understanding of the text, but at the same time we appreciate the ethics of ikhtilaf. We appreciate the conditions. That's why we have this maqasid, and apart from that we have what we call usul al-fiqhiyah, the 5 maxim, the 5 important maxim or qaidah fiqhiyah that we must understand. So this al-umuru mi maqasidiha, attention, and then number 2, al-yaqin la yadhu bishak, preservation of the original, ad-darar yuzal, the hardship is avoided, and then number 3, al-mashaqqah tajlibu taysir, difficulty will make you easy, and number 5 is al-adah muhakkamah, custom determine the law. This is not something that the ulama created. These 5 maxim are based on the Quranic injunction, are based on the hadith. Some people say that, oh, this is a creation of the ulama. No, the ulama has not created anything. These are all based on the Quranic teaching, based on the hadith. They are being made for us to make it easy to understand the Sharia. And these five principle or kaidah, the ulama say, is the epitome of the Sharia, the essence of the Sharia. And the last one, Mr. Chairman, my apology for taking some time talking to you, is we must prioritizing the issues. We must have our priority. Okay, I put here 3. We must protect the human lives and property. As a government, as a society, we must protect human lives and property. Considering the contemporary issue, we are talking about contemporary issue now. Okay, So we see that in other Muslim country, there is no protection of life, there's no protection of property. We must put in our priority to protect the life and to protect the property. Probably in Maldives not an issue at all, because here life are protected by the law and also the property. But if you go to other Muslim country, there's no protection whatsoever. And people there need the protection. And number two is the Muslim unity. Because we see now that Muslims are disunited. And when Muslims disunited, the enemy can enter easily. Some people tell us that this ISI, this ISIS or Daesh, is not a creation of Muslim, it's a creation from somebody else that want to disunite the Muslims. And then, for me, what is jihad? The great jihad, the greater jihad is to preserve, is to protect the Muslim well-being. That is the greatest jihad. Because why? Because the Prophet said that we return back from the small jihad to the big jihad. Narja min jihadil asghar li jihadil akbar. Kubra. Okay? So the greater jihad is that our effort to protect and to maintain the well-being of the Muslim Ummah. On that note, I end my lecture. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Hidayat, for the words you've shared with us. I'm sure we all have benefited deeply from your wisdom and insight. Your enlightening speech has surely served the purpose of the message series. Goodbye and a very good night to you all. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.